Hi everyone, and welcome to another Azure stream. Today is Friday. It's been a long week. So tonight I'm going to be speaking to Veronika. I hope I don't butcher her surname. Veronika Kolesnikova. Hopefully that was okay. Veronika, let me add you to the stream. Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Greg. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. How about you?
Good. You did a good job with my last name.
Yeah, it's not that hard. I've butchered everybody's name when I'm reading it out. I get really nervous when I'm reading names out, and I have to put it up just above the screen, and I was like, yeah, that's easy. Yeah, so good to have you on tonight. We were going to have just a general chat, but I was going to ask you about AI and generative AI in general. So I remember meeting you at Ignite. When was it? Was it last year, or was that the first time we met last year?
I think so,
Yeah,
yeah.
and we were talking about how the fact that, well, I asked you, it was all about AI was coming out at that point, and it just seemed to be a big boom because it was like, I think we were talking on Twitter about like AI is very quiet, and all of a sudden it's just went kaboom. What's that been like for someone who's an MVP in the AI world? It must have just been like unbelievable.
Yeah, it is
Yeah,
totally crazy.
yeah. I mean,
um,
how do you? It's went from like being where is all the AI to like craziness. So, what kind
yeah.
of stuff are you doing? Are you working with AI, or are you just an MVP in AI and you don't really get to work with it day to day? What's this? What's this kind of thing for you?
Yeah, it's all tricky. I'm working for an insurance company.
Okay.
So they are very strict about AI
Ah,
and
yeah,
what they're
yeah,
doing there. And when I joined, I'm like, guys, I'm excited about AI. So maybe I can do something here and there and help you out and get real life experience and, maybe share my knowledge and experience with the company. And then it wasn't official information, but like
right.
behind the scene they're like, we actually look for like real data scientists with real degrees and like experience building models because we have so much data going on and like it
Yeah,
is so important. So yeah, but now I think they are more interested in just AI services, and
right.
they kind of slowly, I have that feeling that they're slowly moving into that democratization of AI. Finally, I think it's
It's,
about time to
yeah, yeah.
make
You should be
make that
just
AI
keep
more.
prodding them. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah. So now there are a couple of small opportunities, more like POCs and stuff like that, that I can do at work. And I am trying to get into that space and actually start working and get professional experience. But I do a lot of research in my own. I
yeah,
try different things. Definitely being Microsoft MVP in AI helps a lot because I have
yeah.
access
Go
to
on.
the latest and greatest and all
Mhm.
the resources, so I can play with them. I can learn something on my own and then bring it back to the community, tell the community, and then people also provide feedback, so I know what is working for people in the industry and what is not working.
So just before I asked you that question when I met you, was it quiet on the whole AI front? Because I know they had cognitive services, but when I was playing with cognitive services, it felt like a service that most people just played about with and not really too many companies were using. But now everybody's talking about AI. It seems to be like the most popular thing. I mean, I'm almost fed up reading about AI on Twitter. It's like everybody's doing it. It's almost like, oh, here's another AI post, and people are like, ignore. But it's hard to ignore now.
Yeah, yeah, it's a little tricky. Again, everything about AI, it's not just black and white. Before, I think cognitive services were really first step
Mhm.
into opening up the world of AI. I personally started with cognitive services, and I wanted to invite more people to live through my experience.
Yeah,
I Before using cognitive services, I didn't know much about AI. I don't have degree in
mhm.
machine learning or artificial intelligence. So for me, it was more like how I can use AI as a developer without going too deep.
Yeah,
Uh, and we actually use cognitive services. I was working for University of Massachusetts Medical School, It was a while ago. But yeah, they actually had that initiative. They had an app where it was kind of some kind of training or some kind of exercises for patients. And then before and after the training, they needed to gather some information about the mood and patient like
Yeah.
overall feeling. But it was so ugly. It just basically just dropped down, and then people was
Oh, really?
click and
Yeah.
then like, oh, I feel great. I'm like, when I
Oh,
see it, I don't feel great anymore.
no. So
So
it's a lot
yeah,
different now, though, eh? A lot different technologies now. So
yeah.
how long have you been an AI MVP?
Oh, I just got my fifth one.
This one? Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, I'm waiting for my blue disc.
I was going to say, yeah, when do we get a blue disc? So for people, I've just realised that we've skipped your entire intro. So for people who don't know who Veronika is, go and go and introduce yourself, because I realised I was really rude there and forgot to introduce you. Tell us a little bit about where you're from and what you do.
Yeah, I think you just got so excited about AI. You're like,
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
let's just jump
Totally
into
forgot. Yeah.
that. Okay. My name is Veronika Kolesnikova. I am senior software engineer at Liberty Mutual in Boston, Massachusetts. I am also Microsoft MVP in AI, and as I just mentioned, I just got my fifth one. Very exciting.
Congrats.
Yeah, I am also a co-organizer of Boston Azure user group here in Boston.
That's
And
where we met, actually, isn't it? That's where you invited me to speak on that. That's how I think we got in touch to begin with.
yeah. I think we were struggling in the beginning of the pandemic. We didn't know what to
Mm-hmm.
do. We never
Yep.
ran any virtual events. And then it was just kind of cry for help to the
Reach out to
community.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, like save us, help us, like
I
come
think I was doing
present
that
virtually. Yeah.
I was
And
doing that like 1 o'clock in the morning over here. Yeah, that was awesome though. So if anyone's looking for an Azure user group, hit up Veronika for the Boston Azure user group. Are you still doing them virtually or is it in person now?
so we are trying to get back to in-person events, but now we are trying to run them in parallel.
Okay.
Which like our goal to have one in-person event and one virtual event a month.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it's tricky, and especially with in-person events, I think people are not used to in-person events anymore. So we are actively looking for local speakers. It is surprising that lots of people actually moved out. That people who we were in touch and who used to come present,
Don't anymore.
and then
Yeah.
moved out, and now we're like, okay, now we need to
Uh,
find new speakers. And
yeah.
it is really tough because I want to encourage new speakers. I want to kind of do for newbies same thing as Bill did for me. Bill Wilder,
Yeah.
the main organizer of Boston Azure. Yeah, he was mentoring me when I just started speaking, and he helped me with my first presentation. I remember we were sitting at MIT practicing. I was
Very
telling
cool.
him my presentation. Yeah, that was fun. So I am willing to do the same thing for people, or if they don't trust me, they can always go to Bill. Bill has a lot of experience. But it is hard to find the right people who
Yeah.
not afraid and who would just say, okay, yeah, I'm ready to try it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll come back and I'll ask you more a lot about that going forward. But where your accent, you're obviously not from Boston. Where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Russia. Yeah, I moved to the US 10 years ago. I celebrated 10 years a couple of days ago.
Nice, cool. So yeah, I remember when we were in Seattle, I met up with you at Ignite last year, and we went to a Georgian restaurant. That was the one and only time I think I've ever been to a Georgian restaurant, but that was amazing. Yeah. So he says here in your profile that you love dancing, traveling, and aerial yoga. I have to ask you about the dancing and the aerial yoga. What's aerial yoga? Because that sounds interesting. We'll come back to
um,
AI in a minute, but I have to ask you about that.
of course. Yeah, so aerial yoga, aerial fitness, they also call it in circus world, they call it sling.
Okay.
It is basically like a hammock hanging from the
Oh,
ceiling,
really?
and
Oh, wow.
then you can do either yoga poses, and then they call it aerial yoga, or do something like tricks and dips and drops, and that is more like fitness slash circus style. Yeah, I've been doing it for maybe 4 years, a little more than 4 years. Yeah, so it is really fun.
Cool. So,
Um,
it says here you're passionate about back end web development and AI. So you work with C Sharp, .NET, Xamarin. You still doing that stuff, or what do you do day to day just now?
Yeah, so actually, since I joined my current company, I kind of stopped doing C Sharp and .NET for my
Okay.
day job. I'm still using it for all my experiments and play after hours.
Yeah.
But for my day job, I'm using Java, Node.js, TypeScript. It
Okay.
was an interesting transition. When they hired me, I had very little experience with those languages, but I feel like once you know a couple of languages, you can
Yeah.
kind of understand and pick up others. Especially Java, it is kind of similar to C Sharp
Yeah, that's quite
in
similar.
a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you've done one, you can switch to the other one quite easily. Yeah. TypeScript is quite interesting because I'm old enough to remember when TypeScript first came out and all the JavaScript people were going, "No, this is terrible. Why would you want to do that?" And now they're all like, TypeScript. Everyone does TypeScript, so
What
that's
do
quite.
you use? Do you still develop code?
No, unfortunately, I don't. I don't really like coding apart from PowerShell and Bicep. That's about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Talking to Sam Cogan 2 nights ago, he does infrastructure as code using Pulumi, which is you can write C sharp to do infrastructure as code. So I'm going to start playing a bit with that. Yeah, because I miss writing code because you know what it's like when you write code. You get the earphones on and you just get in the zone and start battering stuff out. Yeah, I'm working on two internal projects. Well, not internal, two of my own projects where I'm still doing C sharp and then doing a bit of API work as well, just to try and keep the skills going. I haven't really looked at AI yet, so we'll come back to AI in a bit now. Tell us a bit about AI and the OpenAI service. Have you got access to that? Obviously, you will have because you're an MVP in AI. But how much have you been using that in your own spare time?
Yeah, I've been playing with it for some time, at least several months. I was presenting. I have a talk about Azure OpenAI and how to use it in bots. Um,
Cool.
yeah, so talking about the service itself, it is
Mhm.
really cool. It's growing. It's changing so much. It is really hard to keep up with it, especially when I'm not using AI for my day job.
Yeah,
So it is hard to keep it up and know all the tricks and tips and all the new features that are releasing. Like I feel like every week
every two
something
days. Yeah,
new. Yeah.
that's
Now
the
it's
problem with
not
them.
years anymore. Now it's like every
No.
day there is
Hmm.
something new going on. Yeah, Azure OpenAI is really fast changing. We also at work we have kind of our like local similar thing to that. So I was able to use it for work a little bit, just to kind of test the system and see how it works, the internal system,
Hmm.
um, which I assume based on OpenAI, since they're using the GPT 3.5 Turbo behind the scene. So it's not like completely custom homegrown stuff. But I was able to use it for actual work to try to write unit tests.
Oh,
It takes a lot of time to actually write unit tests for our code. We have pretty big code base.
okay.
And yeah, I was just trying to use it. The trick is that GPT 3.5 Turbo was not meant for coding.
Hmm.
It doesn't
Yeah.
include the codex model inside of it. So although, like all those smaller unit tests, they're kind of okay.
Hmm.
They obviously require some manual enhancement to make them better and kind of
Yeah.
100% usable. But so yeah, the GPT 3.5 Turbo I wouldn't recommend for any coding tasks. I think GPT 4 is a little better, and there are special codex models. So GPT 4 is kind of like cross everything, cross solution stuff. So you can maybe create your bots, you can create conversations, and then you can also maybe ask it to write code or write articles, write books. I don't know what people use it for. There are so many different applications, but yeah, I don't recommend GPT 3.5 Turbo. And then going back to your question, yeah, I used the Azure OpenAI for my own personal research for
What sort of stuff are you going to do?
yeah
What sort of
getting
stuff are you?
yeah getting kind of prepared for that talk about Azure OpenAI. I actually presented it at Boston Code Camp this spring, and then I presented it internally at my company, because it's not that easy to get access for people who are not MVPs, and lots of people are interested in how it looks, what it does, how you can maybe quickly write some POCs or start implementing it with your solutions.
Yeah. Andrew's just saying that Jason, one of the lead teams for the Boston Azure, wrote a chatbot for COVID during the pandemic. That's awesome. Yeah. So what? Nick's got a question. What's your favorite programming language at the moment, or ever? What's your favorite programming language ever? Let's go with that. Mine is definitely C# because I was brought up doing VB6 and then did C#, and that will always be my favorite because it's just nice. What's your favorite?
I think I still like C# better, although I don't use it that much anymore. But since I've been using it for so long, and I started using it in school, and then in grad school, and then since then, so yeah, I think because I kind of started with C. I started with C and then C++ and then C#.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of like that's
You started off tough and got easier life as it went on. It's not an easy language.
Yeah, it's kind of close to my heart because of that. But I feel like I'm missing the new features because again they're releasing new versions of C#, and now I'm kind of behind since I don't use it on a daily basis.
That's the problem with these languages. Like if you stop using them, I think I was doing C# 5 or 6, and it's now at like 8. So you're so far behind. It's unbelievable. Right, let's talk a little bit about AI. What? So you wanted to talk about generative AI. Oh, here's a question here. Let's just go. Right, okay. Here's a good question from Mert. What are the risks and limitations of AI in business?
Oh, that's a loaded question.
Yeah, that's a big question. How long have we got?
The main answer here is it depends. Depends on the business. So if it's something critical, like you have lots of PI data, like for example, insurance, or you work with patient data and you are supporting healthcare, maybe hospital or something like that, then definitely need to be more vigilant about the data that you feed to AI models. You need to make sure maybe you are using not the cloud-based options, but something local, and then you are not training the model with that PII data. I think at some point there were some issues when people were complaining, or they actually filed lawsuits and they wanted to scrape their data from those large language models. That is pretty much impossible. I actually haven't heard that anyone did that, because once you train your model on data, it is gonna be there forever, and it's really hard to find it from there and like get it out.
Were you at the MVP summit last year or this year? Sorry, did you go to that?
This year, yeah.
Just when did you? I remember Mark Rusnovich talking about all the money they had spent on putting servers in all over the world. That was quite a lot. To go back to Mert's question real quick, the risks and limitations. When you use OpenAI and you train it on your own data, you have to be careful with that. Yeah, you have to be careful with what kind of customer data you're training that on. Is that right?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how OpenAI works, but Microsoft people, they are saying that Azure OpenAI is not using customer data for training. There
Okay.
might be some tricks when Microsoft has access to the data, not all the time, but when you actually sign up for the service, I do recommend to read the
Mm.
documentation, and I do recommend to read what you sign up there. That is very important. And then I think there is a way to opt out so they won't have access to your data at all. But
Yeah.
why they need that access sometimes? Because they need to verify sometimes the model or like their protective layers that Microsoft
Mhm.
put on top of it. They are actually kicking in and marking it as a warning content. Maybe it's something rude, or maybe something racist, fascist,
Mhm.
some
Yeah, yeah,
horrible stuff, and they just want to go and check if it's actually that bad, and then they will kind of mark that content manually.
yeah,
That's what they are saying, that's the only way they're accessing the data.
yeah. So Sheta was basically saying you need to stay away from PHI, P2, CDI data. Yeah, you definitely do. I think that's what a lot of customers are kind of concerned about. Indeed, indeed. Here's a very good question. I just wanted to say hello to everybody real quick. So hello to Sujeta, Andrew, Nick, Dan, Maya, Andrew. We're going to read your names out twice. And Ahmed. So Ahmed's got a really good question. I'll let you answer that one, Veronica. Have you seen any interesting use cases for Azure OpenAI?
Oh,
I'm
interesting
trying to
case.
think.
There are so many interesting cases.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Yeah, I'm trying to think if I've got any so far. I'm sure I have seen loads, and I've probably read about the articles and then forgotten. But yeah, I'm really keen on, like, we have. It sounds really boring, but we have like a system where we put all the support tickets in. I'd really like to train OpenAI to look at that data and then be able to query that, because I'd really like to get some stats out of that. So I'd like to do that. And I think that runs in a SQL Server database. So I think probably in a couple of months' time, when I've got some spare time, I'm probably going to take some time out and stop doing these and just look at OpenAI, because I haven't really had a chance to do it yet, and it does look quite promising, indeed.
Yeah. And maybe Azure OpenAI can be just one block of that solution. You can
Mhm.
add cognitive search on top. I think it's a big topic right now when they're not just using those large language models and generative AI. They're kind of augmenting it with something else like cognitive search or other cognitive services. And then you can create really awesome solution where you can basically get one input and then process it through the
Yeah.
whole system and then get something awesome, like the whole blog post, for example, with like pictures and text and links. And yeah,
Mhm.
just
Yeah.
one example there.
Yeah. At the MVP summit, they showed some examples of um, they had a PDF in the downloads folder and they dragged it into chat the chat GPT thing that was built into Windows. And it basically said you could type in summarize the PDF and it would give you a top 10 summary of the PDF. I thought that was quite cool. The other one, even Sam Cogan the other night there, when I was asking about Pulumi website's got Pulumi AI. So you go into Pulumi and go, show me the code for creating an Azure virtual desktop, and it basically shows you all the code. I was like, that's very cool. So the kind of things I would like to do is point at our documentation for work so that people can query that and try and get like, how does this work? And then it will go off and query that and bring up results. And you can have a chat with it. I think that would be quite cool. But that's
Yeah.
just a very simple example. I
Yeah,
need
and
to.
you don't have to use only Azure or like Microsoft
Mhm.
stuff. It can be connected to anything else. If you have like your local search, or if you heard about LangChain, that is a big deal right now. So you
What's
can
that? Tell
connect
us about
different.
that.
So it's an open source framework where you can connect basically different pieces together and
Okay.
create the whole solution that uses OpenAI or other large language models on the same level with other resources that you can connect there.
Okay. So, really simple question, but you were wanting to talk about generative AI. So, in your view, what's generative AI? Like, if someone didn't know what that was, how would you describe that?
Yeah.
Easy
Um,
question. Not me.
yeah, so generative AI, I have my good schema of things, how, all that, the universe of AI works. So it's
Mhm.
basically machine learning is a subset of artificial intelligence, and then deep learning is a subset of machine learning, and then generative AI, which is not officially a subset of deep learning, but it can be treated as a subset because it goes deeper and it can generate content or text, basically generate something new that it has never seen before.
Right. Okay.
And that's the in the core of generative AI.
Okay.
So even deep learning kind of can, if you work with cognitive services, lots of, I think all of them actually are based on the deep learning
Got it.
techniques.
Right. Okay. So has anyone tried Microsoft Designer on anyone tried that yet? Answering the have you tried Microsoft Designer yet? You tried that?
No.
Oh, I'm going to do a demo of that then for everybody. I'm just going to load it up now. So you've heard of Canva.com where people go on and create images and designs for like flyers for YouTube thumbnails and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to show you what I think generative AI is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here because I'll probably get this wrong. But let me share my screen. So let's see if this works. I'll probably screw this up, but let's see if we can do the entire screen. Right, so this is Microsoft Designer for anyone who hasn't tried it. It's just designer.microsoft.com. It's free, I believe, at the moment. So you can go in and type something and it'll generate like images and designs. Is that kind of what generative AI is, or is that completely not the right thing? So if I do like generate design me a thumbnail about my podcast, about Azure Greg. Right, and you can also get it to. You can also add images, right? So you can go in and say, like, I want the image part of this design. So let's just pick a picture. Let's just do. Oh, I don't know. Now I'm showing all my pictures, which is hilarious. Let's put you on it then, right? Just for a laugh. I had to do all the designs, right? Podcast talking to Veronika. Right. So and then you basically, my machine's just decided. Right. So let's do generate. Is that kind of generative AI? So in the background, to me, that's going away and trying to generate designs based off of what I've typed and the image.
Yeah,
Is
and
that
you
kind
can
of
generate
yeah?
all kinds of things. You can generate images and text, code, same thing as like Copilot, right?
So that's quite nice. You get designs and you also get the chance to then edit this. You can go in and like customize it. So let's just say we were going to go for that. You can then go and customize it, and you can also click the suggestion. So it's like, let's go back actually. No, I broke it. Yeah, I shouldn't have done that. But I think we get the idea. Yeah, so that's generative AI. Yeah, okay. Cool. I'll stop
Yeah.
sharing now. Yeah, I wasn't really sure. Oops. I don't know what I've done. I've stopped sharing my screen. What have I done? What have I done? No. Okay. Yeah. Sorry. Continue.
It's okay. So yeah, I just noticed a couple of days ago that now in that Azure AI Studio, which is basically focused on Azure OpenAI, now they have that DALI in preview.
Oh, Dali. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to see the how it works, the portal, I can share my
Yeah. Do
screen.
you want to do some demos? Yeah. Throw you on the
It's
spot.
not really a demo.
No. You want to show us how it works? Do you want to? Have you got time to do that? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me do that. There we go.
So
Cool.
that's how it looks. You have access to all those models here, and you see
So
if they're
these are models that we can take advantage of. Is that right?
yeah. So they have different versions of GPT 3.5 Turbo. They have DaVinci. They have GPT-4, GPT-4 35K. I think that one is the latest and greatest right now. And then some of those embedded models that are a little cheaper. And I guess it depends what you're trying to do with them. but I deployed a couple of models just to play with them. And it's GPT 3.5 Turbo, the Da Vinci with Codex. So I was trying to write some code using just the model here and the playground. And then GPT-4, I also deployed that.
Okay. So did you deploy these, or are these available just now?
Yeah, those are you have the whole list of models here, and then
Right.
choose it here. You can click on deploy, and then it will deploy it for you.
Cool.
The create custom model is grayed out. I don't think it is accessible right now.
Okay.
And yeah, I just deployed those 3 just to play with them, and then you can actually go to the playground. I'll start with DALL-E since I mentioned it, and I played with it before joining the call. I'm like, okay, I haven't really played with that playground, so I was
Okay.
trying a couple of things. And you
That's
can
cool.
see that you just put a description. So that is a picture of a ginger cat writing code on a laptop sitting in a garden, which is really cute.
I think you've got a ginger cat. No,
Yeah, and it's pretty realistic. It looks like an actual picture.
it does. Yeah, it
Other
does.
than the laptop is kind of a little wonky there.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, if you don't go
that's
into
cool.
details, it looks pretty cool. But that one is also cute. I just wanted to make it a cartoon, and then I replaced picture with a cartoon word here. And yeah, you can download it, you can show code, you can generate new image with the same prompt. You can copy the prompt and save it somewhere or delete the whole picture. And also
Mhm.
fun thing here is the code. You can see
Oh,
what the
so
code
you
is
could.
here.
Oh, interesting. So see when it says Python, what other options have we got?
Python and JSON.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I need to play with this a bit more.
Yeah, so it's
Definitely.
really accessible. You have access to playground. You can actually tweak the image size and number of images to generate. I just put 1 for now. You can put up to 3 here. And then those 2 are actual playgrounds that,
Okay. So you can
they
just play a
can
bit of it. Yeah. Yeah.
around, yeah. And then you can choose your deployment for completions. It's GPT 3.5 or that Codex model that I have. Or, and then they have a couple of, not a couple actually, a lot of examples here. So
Cool.
again, you don't have to start from scratch.
Mhm.
And then you can play with like length of tokens, the temperature. So
Oh
the
yeah.
higher the temperature is between 0 and 1, the higher the temperature, the more creative bot is gonna be,
Ah,
or
that's cool.
the response is gonna be.
Nice.
And then probability. So you can also tweak all that. And then when you're done and you're like, okay, I'm all set. Now I want to move to actual code. Again, you have that view code
Oh,
option.
that's really cool.
And here you have a little more languages like JSON, Python, C Sharp, and
Ah.
Curl.
So I could basically take that code and open it up in VS Code, and can I run it from there?
Yeah, you can copy the code and then just, yeah, go with it.
Okay. Need to play
Yeah.
with this a bit more. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
A couple of questions coming in. Let's answer them real quick. What have we got? Nick's asking real quick. Have any of you taken the Azure AI certification before? You must have done that. Yeah.
Yeah, I only did one, the very first one. I think it is,
Fundamental.
huh?
The fundamentals one.
Yes,
Or
the
yeah.
fundamentals. So it's not a real certificate. I mean, I don't have to renew it. It's only one-time
Yeah.
thing.
Not true. Yeah.
I was thinking about maybe taking more exams, and then life got busy, and I never went back.
Yeah. No.
But I am planning to do it at some point.
I did one or two, and it's quite tricky because you need to. It goes into all the cognitive services things like the LUI, which is the language interpretation stuff, and you really need to know. See, like the temperature and stuff like that. You really need to know what that means and what the settings can be. It's a little bit tricky if you don't use it a lot. If I had to sit it again now, I'd probably feel it because back then I was studying and playing a bit with it day in day out. But when you're doing the cognitive services, it does go quite deep into like what are these settings, and if you're not really using it every day, it's really quite tricky. So yeah. Anyway, okay. So we'll come back to the questions that we sent. DALL-E looks really good. The chat's pretty cool as well. What else
Yeah,
is
those
there?
are the completions, and then the chat looks a little different here.
Okay.
So you can generate your system message. So it's kind of that system prompt
Right. Okay. Yeah.
where you can put all the restrictions. So, for example, if you want your chatbot or your model on return data about maybe insurance,
Yeah. That's a good idea.
then it is not going to answer any other questions. Just type it in the system prompt. Only answer questions about insurance, and if you get asked about something else, just don't respond or like provide a link or do something else. And then yeah, here you also have that option to view the code, play with different deployments, so you can compare maybe GPT 3.5 Turbo and GPT 4 if you have a couple of models deployed. Again, access to all those parameters that you can tweak and see how they all work. And then you can see the raw JSON there if you want to. And then the thing in preview, which is really cool, is add your data. So you can add your custom data.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of format? What kind of formats is that? Is that any kind of format, or does it need to be JSON or?
No, there are three options. You can have your Azure Cognitive Search, Azure Blob Storage, and then upload files.
Oh, that's a good method. Oh, cool. Yeah. And I take it Microsoft normally bring out these services like with not like a kind of limited feature set, and then over time it gets more and more. So I guarantee that's probably what will happen. Susheta's got a good question for you. Do you feel like you're getting AI getting overwhelming in general?
Yes.
I think most people
I think it's just really hyped up right now. It's been quiet for some time, and now it's just so much. Everyone just jumped on it and started using it. Maybe, and it will come down at some point, and then it will be just kind of like another development framework.
My tip for stuff like that is, see when Ignite and Build are on, and if I'm not there, I don't watch them live because I think the hype's too high. It's through the roof, and I'll give it a couple of weeks and then I'll go back and see what's interesting. And that's kind of how I try and avoid the hype. Don't get me wrong, the hype's still in the sessions, but it's nowhere near as bad because everybody's like, "Oh, this is amazing and this is great," and people don't really realize that this comes out and it's nowhere near finished. This product is just to get them out before Google, and then they'll build on it over time. There'll probably be quite a few bugs in OpenAI, and they'll fix them as they go. But these things will get much more. They'll get much better over time, without a doubt. Did you see the demo of Windows 11 when we were at MVP Summit? Did you see that when they had ChatGPT built into? They had ChatGPT built in, and basically you can say. It's like you can chat to say, show me songs by like this artist, and it'll go into Spotify and start playing them and pick up the radio channels, and then you can say like, what time's my meeting at blah, and it would scan your email and stuff like that. Now, I had real concerns about that because it's searching your email and stuff like that. So it was. What's your thoughts on that when it's like running on your personal computer and could potentially be scanning your pay slips and stuff like that? I guess they would need to be very careful with stuff like that.
Yeah. And all those demos, they're really cool, but when you start using those generative models and large language models, then they're not always perfect. You still need to understand how to use them, what layers of protection you want to put on top of them. Even with Azure, OpenAI, Microsoft put a lot of layers, like security layers, but you still need to think how you can improve it on your end. And lots of people are talking about hallucination of the models. That's a problem right now. Hallucination is when model is producing completely random information.
Oh, really?
And there are a bunch of ways how to minimize those hallucinations. I actually I'm sometimes I actually connect to the AI show that Seth Horace is running on Mondays.
Yeah.
And he was saying that, oh, don't call it hallucination, otherwise people think that
Good.
the model is real, it can feel, it can be sick, it can hallucinate, it's like a person, but it's not a person, it's just a model, a very good model that can generate stuff from inputs, from prompts. But yeah, eliminating that so-called hallucinations, that's a challenge, because you can limit, maybe you can reduce the temperature first, so it
Yeah.
can provide more factual information. You can reduce the amount of tokens returned, so the answers will be shorter.
Okay.
That way, the model doesn't have a lot of opportunities to actually come up with random stuff there.
Yeah, I want to ask you about that in a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, if you're working on something mission critical, maybe it's like health related, or
Mhm.
other mission critical applications, then you need to make sure that you put in that protection. If something's going on and the model is not spitting correct data, it's not
Mhm.
factually correct,
Yeah.
then you can kind of suppress, or put some kind of tick mark saying that it doesn't have to be 100%
Yeah.
accurate.
Yeah, because I was at the MVP summit and I was at a talk where it was an Australian guy, I can't remember his name, but he's like, who's using ChatGPT? And everybody puts their hands up and he's like, let me show you an example of why you shouldn't trust it. And he puts in who was the first person to write a book on SQL. And it actually brings back the wrong name and the wrong book title. He says, who wrote this book? And this book doesn't even exist. And in ChatGPT, it's like, this book was written in 1970 by this guy who isn't even a person. And then it gives you Wikipedia links that don't even go to the right place. And it was like, and I'm like, question, like, why does it do that? But he's like, well, it has to bring back something. And that, I take it that's kind of like the temperature type stuff that you're talking about. It can give you absolute crap back, because this was like all made up. None of it was factually correct at all. So one thing I would say is people need to watch with what it comes back, because it's not always correct. Yeah, it's quite
Yeah,
interesting. It's quite interesting when it's wrong, because people
those
are like,
those,
how can
those
you get it wrong?
models
Yeah,
those models, they don't know stuff. They're
exactly.
generative models, right? Generative AI. It
Mhm.
just put in those little tokens together and it
Yeah.
looks like an answer in the end.
hmm well, I want to ask this question from. I want to just check something. Ahmed, you mentioned that you also love the idea of chatting with company documents. Be careful with that, because you need to be careful with stuff like that. I'll give you an example. When I was at JP Morgan, people used to use those websites where you'd grab JSON and pretty format it, and folk get caught out by pasting stuff into like websites that weren't owned by the bank, and you kind of need to be careful with what you're doing with company documents. So yeah, cool idea. Just make sure you're careful with that stuff, because the model's going to be reading this stuff and potentially looking at all this information. Just be careful with that. Yeah, totally lost my train of thought. What I was going to ask you now.
I can
um,
probably stop sharing.
oh yeah, okay. Let me just do that. Okay, I'll stop. How do I stop doing that as well? Cool. I forgot what I was going to ask you now. So have you tried Copilot in Visual Studio Code at all?
Yeah, I tried it a little bit. I didn't do a lot of stuff with it. I talked to people who actually use it on a daily basis. So overall, it's first it's a learning curve. You need to
Mhm.
get used to actually interact with
Yeah,
Copilot,
yeah,
and actually, it's all about prompting, right?
mhm, yeah,
Whatever you put in natural language, then you'll get different response based on that. Um, I tried it for writing unit tests. That worked pretty well.
mhm,
I know that some people use it. I know people who use it for conversion from one programming language
yeah.
to another programming
I've
language.
done that.
And in most of cases, with most popular languages, it works pretty good,
Mhm,
saves lots of time. But if language is pretty rare, like I talked to a person
yeah.
who was trying to convert to Rust, and
Oh,
then he had lots of issues with it, since Rust is not that popular,
yeah,
and it wasn't used a lot for training all those codex models.
yeah. last night we had April Edwards on from GitHub, and she was showing Copilot X, which is like a full-on chat thing that you can have with the code, and that's really cool. Like, keep an eye out if anybody isn't aware of this. Copilot X is like the new thing that's coming out, and there's going to be lots of stuff. But she was showing you code. She went to chat about it, and she just did slash, and it gives you a list of all the things. And she wrote tests, and it's like, do you want me to generate tests for the code? And it was like, yes, and it generated all these. I mean, it's brilliant. It's really, really amazing. Ahmed's got another comment. Let's just put that up. One thing that generative AI is the fear of asking questions. Yeah, I like into a little secret. I have ChatGPT. I pay for ChatGPT, and I have it open during customer calls. So customers will ask me like everything about Azure, and there's no way I know everything. So I'm sitting there like going, and I'm sitting with another tab open going, what is the feature of this? And I'm like, because somebody might ask you things like, what's the quota for, I don't know. Somebody asked me today, what's the quota for dynamic IP addresses in SQL? And I was in Azure, and I'm like, I have no idea. But without really looking away, I was just kind of going like that, kind of going, yeah, 500. And I'm like, how do you know that? And I'm like, I don't. I use ChatGPT. So yeah, I use it constantly. I think it's worth $20 a month. A lot of people say there's better out there, but it keeps me in my job, I think. So do you use ChatGPT much in your daily job? Not really.
No, not a lot. No.
Do you have access to it at work, or are they a little bit? Not.
Yeah. I mentioned that we have that kind of custom GPT. Custom. It's not really custom. It's customized.
Right,
customized the GPT model that we can use for some POCs and playing with it. So I use that sometimes. But I am, I'm not interacting with customers as part of my job.
I did want to ask you about the cost of OpenAI, because I didn't really ask you about that when you had it on the screen. Do you know how much money it's cost you to use these models, or have you any idea? Is it expensive? Is it cheap? What's your thoughts on that? Have you seen how much it costs?
It's I'm not sure about the production level of applications, but for just playing around, it's not that expensive. Again, it depends how much you are using it, but again, I talk to people who use it in production, and I think it was manageable.
So let's change topic a little bit. You do a lot of public speaking. I saw you doing 2 talks at Ignite last year on the floor, which was really impressive. How do you find in public speaking, like on a user group level, but how do you feel it when you're doing it at Ignite? Because that's quite a big conference. You don't really know how many folk are going to turn up. How do you cope with that? Because it must be quite nervous. Must be nerve-wracking.
I was nervous.
Do you enjoy doing them though? You must enjoy doing it.
Yeah, I definitely enjoy it. I get nervous. I presented at Ignite. I presented at VS Live a bunch of times. So I usually don't think about the number of people that are gonna show up. Otherwise, I'll just go crazy. But yeah, it doesn't really matter if you have 5 people or 500 people.
And how do you, for people who don't know how to deal with nerves, how do you deal with nerves? How do you just get over the fact that, like, I'm a nervous wreck and I'm not very good at it, so I don't even apply to speak at these things. But you just apply and get picked because you've done it quite a lot and you're good at it. But how do you quash those nerves and cope with it? What's your tactics for dealing with the nerves?
I don't know. I prepare really well. So I practice it at home. I practice with my near and dear people. So although they don't really know much about the development, they have to listen to me and about AI. I'm like, okay, don't even tell me that. It's not interesting. But yeah, I practice at home. And then I am trying to practice at smaller, maybe local events, maybe online events, kind of to get that first feedback and work on that feedback. Maybe people ask questions, maybe I miss something. Then I can always go back and improve it. It is a little tricky with bigger conferences, although people give feedback. That's the downside of having so many people sometimes in the
Yeah.
audience. People give feedback, and sometimes it is not really related to the
Yeah.
content.
The room's too warm, the room's too cold, and you're like, "What? I can't do anything about that." Yeah.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
like they couldn't hear me. That's a typical problem that I have. I have pretty soft voice, so some people they complain. So now every time before I start my presentation, I check the mic. I ask everyone. I'm like, okay, tell me if you can hear me. But sometimes people still, complain in the end. They're like, okay, we couldn't
My
hear her.
my biggest fear, and I'll tell you a story. So I went to Scottish Summit, and they had a big TV in front of me, and I was on like a lecture in a lecture room, and it was like the biggest screen I've ever seen in my life. And normally I've got bullet points of notes. I don't write notes, but I've got bullet points of just things that I want to cover. And I could not get this working, so I'm now sitting there going, "Oh my god!" And I couldn't even read the slides because I was standing there, and the slides were like right behind me, and the audience is sitting like really steep bit right next to me, and I'm sitting there like, yeah. And I have the fear of going to do a talk and my laptop doesn't work or something just doesn't work. That's my biggest fear in going all these places. So I have total respect for people who can just do talks all around the world. I just, yeah, I panic that my laptop's not going to work because even at the Glasgow Azure user group, everybody just comes up and plugs theirs in. I plug mine in and the screen's going like this, and I'm like, oh, just, yeah, that gives me the fear. I absolutely like sweating the night before and stuff like that. So good on you for doing things like Ignite. That's super impressive. Any plans to do any talks coming up? You're going to try and get to Ignite this year if you can get a speaking gig?
Yeah, so I'm not sure if they have call for papers or anything like that. If they do, I'll be happy to
Apply.
apply, and hopefully I'll get in. Last year it was fun. It was fun for two reasons. They just started opening up, and that was first
Yeah, first time back.
Ignite after the pandemic. I met a bunch of people there, like you and others that I always interact online, but
Yeah,
I had never seen in person, so that was
that
really
was the coolest
exciting.
thing about the whole thing. Meeting all the people who you chat to online and never met before. That was good fun.
Yeah,
Uh,
so that was great. And this year they're planning to make some improvements.
yeah,
And yeah,
I think
I'm
it'll be good this
excited.
year. Yeah,
Yeah,
it should be good.
if they open it up for outsiders outside of
Yeah,
Microsoft people, then
yeah.
yeah, I'll be interested to do that. My plan, I just got accepted to VS Live in Orlando.
Oh, nice.
So that's in November, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, Ignite's November.
Yeah, so I might combine those two, but yeah,
Ah,
we'll
cool.
see. I don't know. I haven't even applied for Ignite, so I don't want to say anything.
What's your so you do a lot of talking at different conferences and stuff. What's your two questions? What's your favorite conference and why? Well, that's one question. I'm going to use that as one. What's your favorite conference and why?
Oh, that actually, I don't know. It depends on what kind of perspective. I think from um, organizational perspective, VS Live, it's a
Okay.
big conference. Um, so unfortunately, I don't have any experience presenting outside of the US.
Yeah, I was going to ask.
I'm
Yeah.
yeah, I'm planning to do it at some point, but not this year, maybe next year.
Hmm.
And yeah, in the US, I think VS Live, they're really on top of things.
Okay.
They have like deadline, and they reach out to you way ahead of time. So I really like the structure that they
Sounds
have
organized.
behind this scene, really organized,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
good. It's hard to get there. I don't know, I got lucky, I guess.
Yeah, you have to get there every time I see you. You're at VS Live. So you must
Yeah.
have the trick. I'm going to
And
ask.
then the local
Mhm.
local events are more like kind of like homey. You
Yeah,
actually connect to people, although it might be like so disorganized because it's just run by community. It's usually they're
yeah,
free
but that's
conferences,
good
but
fun.
you connect to people. Like some of those people, you maybe met them like
Mhm.
somewhere else. It is more like, oh, like I'm coming here to talk to friends.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
so I like that structure.
for people outside of the US, there's loads of conferences like is it that conference and things like that that look quite like what you've just described. what's probably the best one to go to if you're coming from outside the US and you don't really know which one to go for? What would you recommend? Not even a big one, just a kind of smaller one. What's good?
Yeah, I presented at that conference in Texas in January. I unfortunately didn't have a lot of time there, so it was quick turnaround for me. I just came in, presented, and then left. So I didn't really have that interaction. I don't know about the social life there. I really like KCDC, Kansas City Developer Conference. Lots of people from Europe, lots of people from anywhere in the world, basically.
Everywhere.
Yeah, every year I come there. This year it was big. It was fun. I just love it. I like the organizers. I like the community there.
Yeah, I've heard good things about it. I need to try and come over. Definitely. Right, we've got 5 minutes left. Let me ask you about how's the Boston Azure user group going? Is it going strong, or is it how's that going? You still doing that?
Yeah, so we have our ups and downs. Before the pandemic, we used to have 2 separate user groups, North Boston Azure user group and Boston Azure user group. So Bill and I, we were running Boston Azure in Cambridge, here near Boston. And then Jason Haley, he was running the one in Burlington. It was also Microsoft Office there. They still have the office. Then during the pandemic, they're like, okay, we don't need 2 groups. We can just combine our forces. So now 3 of us running that virtual Boston Azure, and we kind of have the lineup of speakers for at least until the end of the year. Maybe like there are like a little bit gaps between them, but I think we are all set with the virtual part of it, since we got used to it during the pandemic, and now it's like running really good. But since we neglected all those in-person events, it's hard to get back. I know that Jason had some disappointments when he tried to reignite his North Boston Azure user group. He just didn't have a lot of people coming in, and maybe it was dependent on the day, or I don't know why, but he just didn't have a lot of people showing up. We had only 2 in-person events for Boston Azure. We're planning to have another one. We're planning that Azure AI Challenge party, local party. So I am actually doing those challenges myself, and then I can bring some insight to the community, and maybe community will share their experience, and we'll just have fun, have pizza, talk about AI. It should be fun.
Awesome. You need to try and go to Ignite so we can go to the spin, the table tennis place again. That was cool. I was showing somebody at work today. It's called Seattle Spin. Is it Seattle Spin, where you can go to a bar and have a drink and you can play table tennis on loads of tables, and you basically play one person that you don't know, and then you move around and play the next person, and you just get to know everybody in the bar, play table tennis. So if you can try and get to Ignite, we'll definitely do that. Listen, Veronika, thanks for coming on, especially on a Friday. It's been absolutely brilliant chatting to you. There's been lots of great questions, so thank you to everyone for all the questions. I'm back on Monday. I'm talking to a guy called John Kilmister in the UK. He does lots of really good Azure stuff. He's got lots of great blogs. Usually when I get stuck, I end up on his blog. So looking forward to speaking to John. We'll cover his blog post and lots of other stuff that he does in Azure. And yeah, we'll do that. So thank you for joining. Veronika, thanks very much. Hopefully I'll see you at Ignite. If not, then take care, and I'll hopefully see you again at some point. And good luck with all your upcoming events and talks. And if you need somebody to speak at the Boston Azure user group remotely, let us know, and we'll reach out to people. There's people on this call that we can get on, so don't worry about that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It was really nice.
No problem. It's good to speak to you. I haven't spoken to you for ages. Let me just play a little thank you video, and then I'll speak to you once we're offline in 2 seconds. Thanks again, everyone. Remember to hit like if you're watching on YouTube. I need to get more subscribers and likes, so thank you very much.